My stepmother has banned my father from seeing me. My father didn't show up to my college graduation or my wedding. 10 years of silence, and I thought he just didn't love me anymore. But yesterday, I found a box of letters hidden under my stepmother's floorboards. Hundreds of them, all addressed to me, all stamped, "Return to sender." He wasn't ignoring me. She was erasing me. And now that I know the truth, let's just say, the locks are getting changed, the lawyers are calling, and her perfect life is about to go up in flames. Everything in my life was divided into two eras, before Diane and after Diane. Before Diane, my dad and I were a team. It was just the two of us against the world in a dusty little ranch house in suburban Ohio. We'd spend Friday nights eating greasy pepperoni pizza and arguing over which 80s action movie was the best. He was the kind of dad who would spend 3 hours helping me with a science project, even if he had to be at the garage at 5 in the morning. He was my best friend. Then, Diane happened. She wasn't the wicked stepmother from a Disney movie, at least not at first. She was polished, soft-spoken, and she had this way of making you feel like she was always on your side. She moved in when I was 15, and by 16, the walls started closing in. It started with small things. A missed phone call here, a forgotten invitation there. I'd ask my dad why he didn't call me back, and Diane would chime in with a sweet, sympathetic smile saying, "Oh, honey, your father was so exhausted after work. I told him you'd understand if he just went to bed." By the time I left for the University of Michigan, the silence became a deafening roar. I'd call his cell phone, straight to voicemail. I'd send emails. No reply. When I came home for Thanksgiving, the guest roomy room had been turned into Diane's yoga and meditation suite. My childhood trophies were in the garage. And my dad? He looked like a ghost-o, off himself. He was quiet, always looking at Diane for permission to speak. The breaking point was graduation. I sent the formal invitation. I sent 3 separate texts. I even left a message on their landline. They never showed. I sat there in my cap and gown, looking at that empty seat, and something inside me just snapped. I decided right then that if he didn't want to be in my life, I wasn't going to beg for a seat at his table. 10 years passed. 10 years of birthdays with no cards. 10 years of career milestones with no "proud of you" texts. I got married to a wonderful man named Mark. We had a daughter. And every time I looked at her, I felt a fresh wave of resentment toward my father. How could you just discard your child? Then, 3 weeks ago, I got the call. My father had suffered a massive stroke. I didn't want to go. My heart was a block of ice. But Mark looked at me and said, "Leo, if he passes away and you didn't say goodbye, you'll never forgive yourself. Not for him, for you." So I drove back to that house in Ohio. Diane met me at the door, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief. She looked exactly the same, perfectly coiffed, perfectly composed. "Oh, Leo," she whispered, reaching out to hug me. I stepped back. I wasn't there for her. "Where is he?" I asked. My voice was like gravel. "He's in the hospice wing at the hospital," she said. "But the doctors say he isn't lucid. It might be better if you stayed here tonight and went in the morning. The house is, well, it's a mess with all the medical equipment being moved." She was acting strange, nervous. She kept glancing toward the hallway. That night, she gave me the guest room, the same yoga suite that used to be mine. Around 2 in the morning, I couldn't sleep. The house felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I went down to the kitchen to get a glass of water, and that's when I saw it. The door to my dad's old basement workshop was cracked open. My dad loved that workshop, but Diane had always hated it, called it a fire hazard. I walked down the creaky wooden stairs, and the smell hit me. Sawdust and Old Spice. It smelled like my childhood. The room was mostly empty, but in the far corner, near the water heater, There was a loose floorboard. I only noticed it because a corner of white paper was poking through. I grabbed a flathead screwdriver from the workbench and pried it up. I expected to find old blueprints or maybe some hidden cache, but what I found made the blood turn to ice in my veins. It was a plastic tub, overflowing with mail. I pulled out a handful. A card from 7 years ago. "Happy 25th birthday, Leo." I opened it. Inside, in my father's shaky cursive handwriting, was a note. "Leo, I haven't heard from you in years. I don't know what I did wrong, but I hope you're happy. I think about you every single day. I love you, Dad." I felt like I couldn't breathe. I grabbed another one. It was an invitation to my wedding. It had been ripped into 4 pieces and taped back together. On the back, my dad had written, "I'm going to try to come, Leo. I don't care what she says. You'll find a way." I dug deeper. There were hundreds of them. Letters from me to him. Letters from him to me. All of my letters had been intercepted. All of his letters had been hidden. She hadn't just banned him from seeing me. She had gaslit both of us into believing the other had moved on. She had manufactured a decade of heartbreak just to have him all to herself. I stood there in that dark basement, clutching a decade of stolen memories, and I felt a rage so pure it felt like electricity. I didn't wait for morning. I marched upstairs and went straight to the master bedroom. I didn't knock. I kicked the door so hard it bounced off the stopper. Diane bolted upright in bed, her eyes wide with terror. "Leo, what on earth?" I threw the plastic tub onto the bed. Letters spilled out across her expensive duvet. "You vulture," I spat. Diane looked at the letters, then back at me. Her face shifted. The mask of the grieving, supportive wife didn't just slip. It shattered. Her eyes went cold. "He was weak, Leo," she said. Her voice wasn't soft anymore. It was sharp, like a razor. "He was obsessed with you. Every time you called, he'd get distracted. He'd talk about moving closer to you. I made this life for us. I took care of him. I deserved his full attention." "You stole 10 years!" I screamed. "He's dying in a hospital thinking I hate him. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I did what was necessary," she said, leaning back against the headboard. "And what are you going to do? He's unconscious. He's never going to know. You're just a stranger who broke into my house in the middle of the night." I leaned over the bed, my face inches from hers. "I am not a stranger, Diane. I'm his power of attorney. I checked the filings before I drove down here. He never changed it from the original draft he made when I was 18. Her face went pale. That's not possible. We had a new one drawn up." "Maybe you did," I whispered. "But he never signed it, did he? Probably because he was waiting for a son who never called to come home and help him with it." I took the tub of letters and walked out. I drove straight to the hospital. I sat by my father's bed for 6 hours. He was hooked up to a dozen machines, looking so small, so fragile. I held his hand and read the letters to him. I read my wedding vows. I told him about his granddaughter Maya. I told him that I never stopped loving him. And then, around dawn, his hand gave mine a tiny, microscopic squeeze. His eyes didn't open, but a single tear rolled down his cheek. He heard me. The next few days were a whirlwind. I didn't go back to the house. I stayed at a hotel and called a lawyer a shark of a man named Marcus who specialized in elder abuse and estate fraud. "She's been draining his secondary accounts for years," Marcus told me over coffee. "It's classic isolation. She cut off his support system so she could control the finances. The letters? That's the smoking gun for emotional distress and coercive control." But Diane wasn't going down without a fight. She tried to bar me from the hospital. She told the nurses I was unstable and estranged. She even tried to file a restraining order. But I had the floorboard letters, and I had the power of attorney. The confrontation happened in the hospital cafeteria. She showed up with her sister, both of them dressed in black like they were already at the funeral. "Leo, give it up," Diane said, her voice loud enough for other families to hear. You're making a scene. Your father wouldn't want this. Just go back to Michigan and let us grieve in peace." I didn't say a word. I just pulled out my phone and pressed play on a recording. It was the audio I'd captured in her bedroom that night. "He was weak, Leo. I did what was necessary. I deserved his full attention." The cafeteria went silent. Diane's sister looked at her with pure horror. Diane's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That's illegal," she stammered. "In Ohio, it's a one-party consent state for recording, Diane," I said, stepping closer. "And I've already sent this to the police, along with the tub of intercepted mail. You see, tampering with mail is a federal offense, and isolating an elderly man from his family while diverting his funds, that's elder abuse." I leaned in so only she could hear me. "I'm moving my father to a private facility in Ann Arbor tomorrow. You will never see him again. You will never touch a cent of his pension again. And by the time my lawyers are done with you, you'll be lucky if you have a new money to buy a cardboard box to live in." The look on her face was better than any inheritance. It was the look of a woman who realized she had finally lost. The move was hard on Dad, but the doctors said the change in environment and the constant presence of family was doing wonders for his neurological recovery. 2 months later, I was sitting in my backyard in Michigan. The sun was warm, and the smell of grilled burgers filled the air. My dad was sitting in a specialized wheelchair, watching Maya run through the sprinklers. He still couldn't speak much. The stroke had taken a lot of his motor skills, but his eyes were bright. He looked at me, and then he looked at the little girl laughing in the grass. "Maya," he whispered. It was the first word he'd spoken in weeks. "Yeah, Dad," I said, squeezing his hand. "That's Maya. She's got your stubborn streak." He smiled, a real, genuine smile. As for Diane? The investigation into the mail tampering opened a massive can of worms. It turns out she had been doing this for a long time, not just to me, but to my dad's siblings and his old friends. She had systematically deleted his life to build a cage around him. She's currently facing multiple felony counts. The house is being sold to pay for my father's long-term care, and she's living in a studio apartment above a laundromat while she waits for her court date. Sometimes, I think about those 10 lost years. I think about the birthdays and the Christmases we'll never get back. It hurts. It hurts like a physical wound. But then I look at my dad, holding a picture book for his granddaughter, and I realize that Diane didn't win. She tried to erase me, but you can't erase a bond that runs through the blood. We're making up for lost time. One Friday night movie at a time, and the pizza, it's still pepperoni. If you enjoyed this story, and you want to hear more stories, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe my channel.